my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I am going to be sharing with you the results of my Vanguard versus Me challenge, and it is a good one. So I have been comparing two Vanguard investments that I decided to make versus two investments that I wanted to make anyway, that I'd done my research on and I thought looked really good, and I wanted to compare the returns. So a lot of people often choose to invest with Vanguard because they are trusted, they have a really good reputation, they have been established for over 40 years, they also have really low fees, and I think the fact that they are uncomplicated is super beginner friendly. So I thought, let me invest a little bit with Vanguard and then let me go ahead and do my sort of more complicated investing, I suppose, because I'd done a little bit more research around it, into investments I wanted to make. So I wanted to invest in a specific ETF and a specific trust outside of the Vanguard platform. So that is what I did. So in this video, I will be comparing the percentage returns between the Vanguard investments that I made and then also the investments that I chose to make separately. So we're at the 2-month mark now, and let me tell you, I am amazed by the returns that I have seen in just 2 months with these different investments. They are very different, so one return is much higher than the other. So I had a look at the Vanguard website, and one of their main straplines is, some people say investing is complicated. We don't think it has to be, and that is definitely the case with Vanguard funds. They're kind of ready to take out of the box and just run with. You can set them up as passive investments. There's also funds that are available if you didn't want to have tons and tons of different funds. There are funds that are available, for example the Life Strategy Fund, that you could just invest in that one alone and just let it run and see how it does. However, I like to complicate things a little bit. I do enjoy doing my research and looking at other investments that are available and trying to obviously get higher returns, because at the end of the day, for me personally, returns and higher returns is what I'm looking for, and I am prepared to do a little bit of research if it means that potentially I can get some higher returns. That is basically what I'm doing with this video. I'm kind of taking the slightly more complicated route and investing in some investments that I've done my research on, rather than sticking with the kind of out of the box Vanguard package. Quickly, before I go into the 2-month results, I just wanted to say that I bought these investments outside of the Vanguard platform. So I bought them all in Barclays Smart Investor, where you can also buy Vanguard investments too. And then the other 2 investments that I purchased as well were in the Barclays Smart Investor platform. But obviously, if you wanted to invest in Vanguard funds, you can go directly through Vanguard and set up something like an ISA with Vanguard, or you can often buy them in other places. For example, Freetrade, Barclays, Hargreaves Lansdown, all the kind of big platforms normally have the Vanguard funds available to you too. Anyway, moving on to the good stuff. So I'm going to cut to the chase and tell you the percentage returns for the investments I made and the percentage returns for the Vanguard investments, and then I'm going to go into a bit more detail on which investments I personally made and then which Vanguard funds I chose as well. So the investments that I chose to make in the last 2 months have increased in value by 5.94% as a whole, and the investments that I chose to make with Vanguard have increased by 1.97% in the last 2 months. So we're seeing almost 3 times as much of a percentage gain with the investments that I chose to make versus the ones that I chose to make with Vanguard. So I think that is really interesting. Only time will tell. I'm going to keep doing these videos for the next few months and maybe even into the years as well, because I do plan to hold these investments for at least 5 years. So the investments that I made an investment in an ETF and then in an investment trust. So the first investment that I made was the Invesco Markets III PLC NASDAQ 100 UCITS ETF. That has a risk level of 6, so it's quite a risky investment to be making. It's an ETF, which obviously kind of makes you nice and diversified, but it is quite a risky one at that. So that risk level of 6 is quite high. And that is where I have seen the majority of my gains. So let me get my spreadsheet out. 13.13% in 2 months, which is madness. I mean, obviously there had been a kind of tech sell-off a couple of months ago, and the Nasdaq wasn't looking so good a couple of months ago, so when I invested in it, it was probably really good timing, but still a 13.13% increase is really, really good. Just to say, in terms of investing, I just invest when I have the money to. I don't wait for the market to kind of dip. I don't think I can time the market. So it is more luck that I invested in the Nasdaq ETF. Then next one that I invested in, this is the other investment that I chose myself, is one that is the Pacific Horizon Investment Trust. Now this one is actually down. This is quite a way up 2 weeks ago, but it is now down 0.84%. So looking at the average of those two investments, so we're looking at a 5.94% return between those two investments that I decided to make for myself. So really, really pleased with that. I will make sure I pop the spreadsheet on the screen just so you can see exactly the kind of quantities and values of these investments that I made. So because I wanted to invest in the Pacific Horizon Investment Trust and the Invesco Markets Nasdaq ETF, I invested larger amounts of money in those. So I invested almost £2,500 into both of those individually, because they were investments that I had already researched and that I already knew I wanted to make. Whereas with the Vanguard ones, I thought this would be really good to compare. I was interested to see how they would do, but I didn't want to invest as much in the Vanguard funds. So I only invested £250 into each of those funds because I wanted to see how they performed. I'd heard so many good things about them, but I wasn't convinced that I wanted to put larger amounts of money into Vanguard funds at this point. So just £250 into both of those. So that's why I'm talking to you mainly about percentage returns, because obviously it wouldn't be fair to talk to you about returns in money, although I will tell you, just in case you're interested, that means that that initial investment of £4,876.59 into the two investments that I made has returned me £289.52 in the last 2 months, which is amazing. And then the £500 investment into the two Vanguard funds has returned me £9.83, just in case you're interested and just in case you want those figures. But I think obviously it's more important to talk about percentage returns. Also, just to say, because I think it's really important as well, all the ongoing charges are included within the results that you're seeing here. So they have already been deducted. So the fact that Vanguard has very low fees, that will be taken into account in these results. So the Vanguard funds I invested in, that I'm actually really pleased with as well. They've done really, really well. As I said, invested £250 into both of them. The Vanguard Life Strategy 100% was the one that I wanted to invest in most, because I've heard so much about it. A lot of people really rave about it. Obviously you can get the different levels, but I went for the 100% because I wanted to go for a riskier level. That has returned a 3.67% return in 2 months, which is amazing. I'm really, really pleased with that. And then the gain on the Vanguard Global Small Cap Index, which was the other one that I invested in, is 0.26% return. So I have made £9.18 from Vanguard Life Strategy, and I have made 65p from the Vanguard Global Small Cap Index. Just to say, I am obviously aware that the Vanguard funds and the investments that I have chosen to make are not in the same sector, they're also not in the same region. The reason I've chosen to compare these investments is because of their risk level, because I thought that that was probably the fairest way to compare them. Obviously, because I was investing in the Pacific Horizon Investment Trust, I could have chosen to invest in the Vanguard Pacific Fund. However, having had a look at it, it wasn't something that I wanted to invest in. I thought, rather than just making investments for the sake of trying to make an entertaining video, I actually wanted to choose investments that I actually wanted to make. Worked out that the risk levels is what I decided to compare these against. And obviously this isn't a like-for-like comparison, it's not a direct comparison. That would pretty much be impossible to do. But yeah, I wanted to compare on risk level. So the Invesco Nasdaq 100 UCITS ETF has a risk level of 6. And then I wanted to choose a Vanguard investment that I actually wanted to make that also had a risk level of 6. So that is the Vanguard Global Small Cap. Then the Pacific Horizon Investment Trust has a risk level of 5, so a little bit lower, but still on that high side of risk. And that I'm comparing to the Vanguard Life Strategy 100%, which also has a risk level of 5. Now, these can only really be compared on their risk level because they're not comparable in terms of sector or in terms of region either. So the risk level score runs all the way from 1 being the least risky and potentially lower returns, all the way up to 7 being the most risky and potentially the higher level of returns. So these investments are sitting at 5 and 6, so on the kind of higher level of risk and hopefully on the higher level of returns. Hopefully this video has been interesting and informative, and if you do have any questions, I haven't answered anything, then please do write a comment down below. I will be doing regular updates on these Vanguard versus me type of videos, and I'll probably be doing them every month. So if you want to see how this is looking in the coming months and even in the coming years, then please do subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like if you fancy it, that would be lovely, and have a really, really lovely day. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.